Tar, I'm sorry, Kufyu Beis, Halacha Tetzvav.
Yes.
Okay, the Mechaber says, Mishanizim et Pas Akum, a person who's makbid to not eat Pas Akum, Mutter Lechol B'Ka'ora, he's allowed to eat on a plate, if he's eating with someone else who's not makbid, meaning I'm makbid to not eat Pas Akum, the person across from me is not makbid, so his food is Pas Akum, he has a piece of bread there, I'm allowed to eat on the same plate as him, I can, yes. Shatam Pas Akum Mis'arav Pas Yisroel. Even though the time from his food is going to get into my food, don't worry about it. It's okay. Because we're eating on the same plate.
So what do you mean that there's
hot bread?
We have hot food. See, with hot food on the
hot food doesn't necessarily travel one to the other.
We'll touch each other, or the police physically. The liquid, however the case, I'm not sure exactly. Good point.
Just being out of
quick thing that I learned with Rabbi first. He gives a share on Sundays. He said something that blew me away. I never heard this before. I'm sure you all know it, but he said that if you put in a tanner, you cook pas, regular chametz, and you put matzah, you're allowed to cook them at the same time.
Really?
I didn't know that.
Okay.
Okay. Negate to this, a little bit.
Okay, fine. So the Mechaber says you're allowed to do this. What's the reason? So we have to try to understand what's going on here. The Mechaber in the previous din said that the Pas Akum is Bata Baroif. Okay? Pas Akum is Bata Baroif. You have a food that's 40% Pas Akum and 60% other foods, it's mutter. Okay? It's Bata Baroif. So this is a continuation of that then, to say that since it's Bata Baroif, therefore, Chazal only asks you to eat the actual food itself, a piece of Pas Akum. If it's mixed with something else, it's mutter, and the blias of it are also mutter. Okay? So this is a continuation of that thing. Not only is Pas Akum is only usher itself. So if it's Bata Baroif, it's mutter. If it's just the time, it's also mutter. Okay?
That's you can put it in essentially cook it at the same time.
So wait, no, not you cook it at the same time. Regular 1 second. But this din the Mechaber comes from the Taisus. We're going to come back to that in a second. Comes from the Taisus. Question is, on the last halacha, the Mechaber said, Pas Akum is Bata Baroif. The Ramah says, but don't do it l'chatchila. Even though it's Bata Baroif, that means if it happened already. But you're now l'chatchila mix Pas Akum into your food, but also l'chatchila, you're not allowed to do that. So why in our case am I allowed to sit down and eat on the same plate as the guy? Why isn't that a type of bittul l'chatchila? I'm sitting there eating on the plate. I can eat on my plate. I can eat on his plate. What am I doing if I eat on his plate? That's allowing his blias to get into my food. If I let the blias get into my food, it's a type of bittul l'chatchila. So the Mechaber didn't make this point, and we'll see in a second. Maybe he doesn't even hold of it. But the Ramah said you're now allowed to do bittul l'chatchila with Pas Akum. So why can I eat on the same plate when the time's going to get into my food? Why isn't that also bittul l'chatchila?
Why isn't this any different than like eating kosher or non-kosher? If you hold that Pas Akum, you're makbid on Pas Akum. So just like you can't sit next to there without having a hecker in between or whatever it is, why wouldn't you need a hecker?
You're asking it from a different angle.
Right.
Since I'm not allowed to eat Pas Akum, right, I should have to have a hecker to make sure I don't take a bite out of his food.
Right. Saying Pas Akum.
It's not clear what the Mechaber means. We'll see more about that in a second.
There was a hatter, so therefore Chada were machmir.
It could be that the Mechaber is only talking about Pas Patur. We'll see more about that in a second. Maybe he's only because the words that the Mechaber, I know I said that, but the words the Mechaber says you're sitting with some Misha Ein and Nizar. Okay, who are the people who are not Nizar means a person not religious.
I understand that.
So right.
It's an Ein and Nizar. It could be. I mean, you should know. I know that. We're going to get back to that. You could say that there is. I don't want to. It's not a complete raya because there is back in halacha ches. There's such a shita that there's no Isra Pas Akum altogether. It's not clear what he means over here. Okay, but it could be he means that it's just Pas Patur. Okay, let's for now we'll say that. We're going to get back to we all get Mirza.
You're talking about hot bread on a plate.
It's a way that blias are going to give it. However, that was he was asking exactly how the blias going to.
Why is it bivatul l'chachila? You don't want it to be bivatul like that.
Are you allowed to do it with something that's treif? Are you allowed to put food on a treif plate? Are you allowed to put the food in kosher food? Are you allowed to put? No, I'm asking a question. Are you allowed to put hot food onto a treif plate?
That's not the case here, is it?
Well, you're doing it in a way that the blias are going to come through. Okay, but however the story is, so why are you allowed to do that? You wouldn't do it with treif food. You're not allowed to do that.
And if your passes also to you.
Okay, so now before we get to try to answer the question, okay, you have. I just want to make a point here, which is there's no question that the Ramah holds of what I just said. Right? Okay? In other words, the Ramah holds that even though it's also to be mevatel pas akum l'chatchila, you are allowed to eat on the same plate, and somehow that's not considered bittul l'chatchila.
Correct.
Okay? How do I know that? Because this is the setup of the way the Ramah says it. The Torah brings Tarsus, who says you're allowed to eat on the same plate. Okay? The Ramah says, the Dr. Moshe says, you know, the Hagoy Shari Dura, the Issa V'Heter, and the Nemuki Yosef all say that Pas Akum is Bal B'Roiv, but you're not allowed to do it l'chatchila. Okay? Now, so far, you don't know whether that agrees or disagrees with what the Torah just said. The Torah said you're allowed to eat on the same plate. And the document says these three people say it's Bal B'Roiv, but you're not allowed to do it l'chatchila. And then he says, nearly, I hold, this is the document talking now, I hold that even though they say you're not allowed to be mevatel l'chatchila, you could still eat on the same plate. I mean, they agreed to what the Torah said, what Tosha said, that you're allowed to eat on the same plate. Even though they said that, they agree that you're allowed to eat on the same place, except for the Hagoy Shari Dura, that was the first of those shitas. In him, there's a diet that he holds you're not allowed to eat on the same plate. Okay? Well, and we're going to get to this Hagoy Shari Dura in a second. But what he's saying is that even Tosha says you're allowed to eat on the same plate. You might think that the people who say you're not allowed to do it would hold not like that. It's not true. You're allowed to do that. But he doesn't say why.
Yeah, no.
He says, even though you might think that they disagree, nearly that it's not true, that they really agree with each other. So the Ramah holds of this thing. And now we have to understand.
Because then the Ramah is not Makil over there.
But, so, now, some people, there are those who say that there's a shach on the previous halacha. When the Ramah said you're not allowed to do it, there's a shach who talked about that. And they want to say that the shach says that the only reason why in our case the Ramah allows you to eat on the same plate is because it's only a klisheni. If I have food that I'm putting onto a plate, it's already into a klisheni. So in a klisheni, it's only a chumrah to say that blias happen in klisheni.
The Moshe talks about temperature.
No, klisheni means is that when the pot that you cook in, allows blias transfer to the pot that you cook in. Once you move to a second pot, even if the thing is hot, so we
in the clinician.
it could be as hot as in the Kli Rishon, but in the Kli Sheni, we say blias can't happen, but there are those who hold that it can't. Some hold that in the Kli Sheni, blias can't happen. Doesn't make a difference how hot it is. Okay, so we're machmir to say that blias can't happen, but maybe to go that far on that chumrah just for Pas Akum, that would be machmir.
So you can't learn anything from this.
No.
So we are machmir.
The Ramah says. The Ramah says we're machmir. It's in Hilchos Malicha, whatever. We're machmir for Kli Sheni. Okay, a different time. We'll talk about that at a different time.
Ain't coming come Lahara.
Okay, we'll talk about that next time. Okay, so they want to say that the shach says, is that the only time the Ramah make us consider it's a klisheni.
Of course, the amount of the whole double beside us.
He doesn't want the klisheni, right? So we're off the hook. Okay, so now the only thing is like this. Okay, there's two questions on this sheet. Okay, the first one is this answer. The first question is that the shach talks about a klisheni. But my understanding of Shach is that he says exactly the opposite of what people are trying to read into it. Okay, I'm going to tell you what the Shach says. It's a little complicated. I'm going to tell you what the Shach says. And I'm going to say it my way, of course, but why I think the Shach is saying a little bit in the gears. Why the Shach is saying exactly the opposite. Okay, listen to what the Shach says. The Ramah said, you're not allowed to do bittul l'chatchila. You're not allowed to be mevatel pas akum l'chatchila. That's what the Ramah said. But the Darkei Moshe said, but the Hagoy Shari Dura is mashma not like this. Okay? He says, but the Hagoy Shari Dura is mashma not like that. The Hagoy Shari Dura is mashma that you're not allowed to eat on the same plate. The Shach says, well,
no, wait, say not on the same plate. What does that have to do with this halacha of Dalit? Talking about imam and Israel Katchila.
So he brings the Darkei Moshe who said, you're not allowed to be mevatel l'chatchila, and the Darkei Moshe said, but to eat on the same plate, you're allowed to do it. You'd be allowed to, except for the Hagoy Shari Dura who says you can't be on the same plate. So the Shach says, it's not true. I don't believe that the Hagoy Shari Dura means to say that you're not on the same plate. So what is the Shach, before we get to what he says, the Shach is trying to say is, everyone agrees that you're allowed to eat on the same plate. Okay? The Darkei Moshe said, no, the Hagoy Shari Dura holds you not allowed to. No, the Shach said, no, you are allowed to. You really are. I did dig from the Hagoy Shari Dura. So he says, the Hagoy Shari Dura doesn't mean that. The Hagoy Shari Dura means is talking about a case not where you're getting tam in the plate, but the end of that person's possible will get into my food. So that's the case when Hagoy Shari Dura didn't let you, is when the end is going to get into my food. But if it's just a question of tam, even Hagoy Shari Dura will agree that tam is okay. It's not a problem to cause tam in the plate. You don't have to worry about tam of Pas Akum. Okay. How does he prove? He says, and I have a raya that the Hagoy Sharidur didn't mean to Aser Tam. He says, because. He says, you think that Hagoy Sharidur would be Aser, his case point that he has to give to Aser would be a case where the Tam isn't a Klisheni? You think that would be the case that he would say to Aser? So it must be that he's talking about that.
In between the lines, in between the lines.
The Yeshlem, the Ma'iri Kish Oicha HaPas Aguri inside. The Ma'iri Kish Oicha HaPas Ba'atzmai. That I'm going to eat the food itself. The end of his Pas Akum was getting to my food. Ubalav Hachi. He says, that's what I think the Hagoy Sharidur means. Ubalav Hachi, meaning, if you want to say that, he means he's talking about a case of Ben. No. So he means to say is, it's only a cliche anyhow. So you think that's the case he's coming to be machrin? So in the Hagoy Sharidura, it means that it was be'en, but what's the Shach trying to say? The Shach is trying to prove that no one holds that there's an Isser on a plate. The document said there are some holds like that. He said, no, there's no one who holds like that. Meaning, and there's no one who holds this on a plate. You can eat on a plate no matter what the cliche part is just a way to say why he can't believe that's what the Hagoy Sharidur meant. But he's trying to prove that you're allowed to eat in a that you're allowed to eat on a plate. There's no extra time. There isn't anyone who holds like that. The document of course doesn't hold like that. But the sheet that he put the Hagoy Sharidur, even like no one holds like that.
Okay. Now you can disagree.
When you say
yeah.
Okay, are we talking about that your food slides over to where his food is and picks up that's
right. That's bad. Right.
That you could.
That you're not allowed to do.
Okay, so that's what he's talking about.
Well, the person who said you're not allowed to eat on the plate.
That's what he's talking about.
Right. Okay. Now the second.
Okay, but the mice is right. The mice is cliche.
Therefore, but the Shach is saying
because you took the Shach from the oven, and then you took it, and then you put it on a plate. So that's a cliche.
The Shach said was what the Ramah didn't say. The Ramah says it's mutter to have Tom come across, like Tyson says, from across on a plate. And he said, except there's one sheet who holds you're not allowed to do that. He says that sheet has nothing to do with this. Okay, it's not true. The Hagoy Sharidur didn't say that. So we're back to what the Dr. Moshe did say, which was, if we ignore the Hagoy Sharidur, so we're back to the regular thing, which is, even though it's also do it l'chachila, it's mutter to get bleeders. Good. It's not only mutter because of the cliche. The cliche had to do with how we got rid of the Hagoy Sharidur.
But the mice is right. The mice is a cliche. So somebody say that.
But that's not. He's not. That's. The Rama didn't say it's mutter because it's a cliche. The Rama says there's no Isser of Tam. And the Hagoy Sharidur, we're using the cliche part just to push away the Hagoy Sharidur. Okay, in the document, not in the Rama.
In a case with the bread. We're talking about bread. We're not talking about anything else.
That's exactly right.
Okay. What is an example of the blias? Because what blias?
What the case of blias?
Yeah. I mean, what is it that bread gives off? That
if my chicken lands on his piece of bread,
chicken is chicken.
It's going to get blias from his bread.
I thought we were talking about bread and bread.
I don't know if it's bread and bread. It could be bread and bread. It could be bread and potatoes. It could be
but this case is bread and bread here.
Why is it bread and bread? I'm eating on the same.
Yisroel, and he's eating Pas Akum.
I could be eating potatoes. I could be anything. It doesn't have I'm eating bread. I'm eating something, and he's eating Pas Akum. He has his hot piece of bread, and my food is going to mix into his food.
Wait a minute. I just want to understand. We're talking about one person has Pas Akum, and the other one has
chicken.
We're talking about Pas Akum and Bishul Yisroel.
Their point, the Mechaber says that it was Pas Akum. So I have a piece of cake, and he has a piece of cake. So my hot piece of cake and his hot piece of cake, and if they touch each other, there's going to be blias. Or if there's liquid on the plate, the blias will transfer to my food.
But isn't that so the blias is not acceptable.
The blias is acceptable.
No, now I'm confused.
Okay. The blias means when the taste travels without any particles actually traveling. That's a blia. Just the flavor gets across without any actual pieces. And be'en means
liquid isn't pieces.
I mean, liquid is that there's bread, and a liquid connecting them, but there's no actual pieces of his bread in my bread.
So
the end would be is that a piece of his bread is actually got into my soup.
So the blias is not from the bread itself.
The blias is from the bread, but it has no pieces of bread. There are no chunks of bread in my bread now. I can't see any bread. I might taste his bread, but I don't have any pieces of bread in my food.
I'm lost. Maybe I just
Liquid's
don't.
kosher.
Why is the liquid kosher?
It's not bread. Yeah. It's just,
The liquid
it's
the
carrying
liquid
over
is bread.
It's transferring the taste, but there isn't any physical bread that's getting across from there to here. There aren't any particles of it. There isn't any visible pieces of chunks of bread that have gotten from that side to this side. There's the taste has transferred across, but there's nothing that you could see that comes across. Think about when you kasher a pot. If the pot is clean, there's no more pieces left of the tray food, but there's still taste absorbed into there. That taste is something that could get in without my actually having pieces. I don't have any pieces of Isser there, but I just have the taste that can come across. Okay. The second reason to think that the documentary doesn't only mean it by cliche, because the words, listen to the words of the documentary. He says, "Le'asru," which I think the Shach quotes this. "Le'asru la'arvi lechatchila, el lechol hapas ba'atzmai, ava mishum tama lechol mechash." For tam, you don't have to be choishish for tam. He doesn't say in a cliche. He doesn't say because it's a cliche. They only asked you to eat the be'en, but tam is not a problem. Don't worry about tam. Okay? He's not saying it's mutter because it's a cliche, so there is no tam. He said mishum tam, there's no.
So it could be clear.
Even inclination. Okay. So now, and you will see more in a second that it means even inclination. Okay. So I think the answer is like this. The Taisus that we said, this din is coming from a Taisus that says that you're allowed to eat on the same plate. Taisus, that's not the beginning of Taisus. Taisus doesn't just wake up and say, you're allowed to eat on the same plate. That's not what Taisus says. Okay, Taisus is like this. The Gemara said, you're not allowed to eat Pas Akum. The Mishnah said, you're not allowed to eat Pas Akum. The Gemara says, don't think that they took back this Gzera. This Gzera was not taken back. Really, this Gzera still continues to stay. That's what the Gemara says. Okay? That's what the whole to-do that the Gzera of Pas Akum is still there.
Why did the Gemara even say such a thing?
Because there are those who thought that maybe it was taken back. Okay, and the Gemara says, no, it's not true, it was never taken back.
Okay.
Taisha says, even though the Gemara said it wasn't taken back, it's not true. It really was taken back. Okay? There's the bulk of Taisha to say is, even though the Gemara said that no one took it back, no, it's not true. They took back the Gzera, and you're allowed to eat Pas Akum. That's the whole beginning of Taisha. He brings a whole bunch of proofs. You're really allowed to eat Pas Akum. You're allowed to eat Pas Akum. That's what Taisha says. Then Taisha says, and if a person who's makbid on Pas Yisroel is eating on the same plate as a person who's not makbid on Pas Yisroel, it's okay. You're allowed to eat on the same plate. Okay? What do you think Taisus is trying to say? Having heard the beginning of Taisus, what do you think Taisus is trying to say?
He's really
trying to say,
there anyway.
Min hadin, Taisus holds that Pas Akum is mutter. Okay? Not pas powder. Pas Akum is mutter. Okay? Min hadin is mutter. So if it's mutter, if it's mutter, the Taisus says, well then, I can eat it myself. So if you're makbid to not eat it, you're from the people who are not sort of following my approach. You don't want to be makbid. You want to be makbid. But to go that far, to say that you're not going to be eating his blias, that's not such a big. You don't have to be makbid that much. Okay. Now, if you look in the Ramah in Kuf Tesvav, that's Yossi Simon, in Simon Kuf Tesvav, the first halacha there, the Ramah says like this. He talks about whether butter of a guy is also or not. He talks about whether chemas akum is also. And he goes, even those people who are makbid tonight in chemas akum, blias of chemas akum are mutter. Okay, now before I tell you the next line, meaning chemas akum might be mutter than anyhow. But even those people who are makbid, they wouldn't be makbid on blias. He says, just like
Except for Pesach.
Just like in Kuf Yud Beis, that by Pas Akum, we're not makbid on blias either. Okay, what does chemas akum have to do with Pas Akum? I mean, the point is that just like chemas akum and adin is mutter, and it's just a chumrah some people are makbid, so we're not makbid that far as to say even the blias are also. Right. So too, just like by Pas Akum, that we don't go so far. It's also we're makbid for it, but we don't go that far to ask even the blias also. Okay, and over there in Kuf Tezvav, it's clear from the Ramah. He didn't say anything about cliches. He just says this tam of Pas Akum doesn't answer. Okay, it's like you can't think that he means because it's a cliche. He's just saying just plain old out. You can eat blias of chemas akum just like you can eat blias of Pas Akum. It's just the isra of tam.
Blias is not us.
There is no isra on blias. There's no isra on blias. Okay, so the first part of how I'm going to answer you, it's a two-part answer, is that the chumrah that we hold that Pas Akum is also Pas Akum is also is only also for the thing itself, which is like the documentary says, also the food by itself, but the tam and the blias is not part of the isra. Okay. Now,
You told that today?
Yes. Now, the second thing is that the
So why are we so marked on Kashrus? Help things.
only from Pas Akum. This is only a special kula for Pas Akum. Okay, if the issue that was there was Pas Akum, then we don't worry about this.
I've worked in, there's a company called Newlyweds. They make,
Oh,
they
you.
make the bread. They make,
Yeah. And, okay.
they make bread. And the lines that they make the bread are strictly for the bread.
Okay.
So why is it that those lines have to be kashered out?
You tell me what's wrong with why are we kosher? Is it treif there? Is
Do they
it
have
milk there?
milchiks over
I
there?
can't answer you, but I don't think so. But I don't know.
So,
I don't
okay,
know.
so the answer is, I don't know why you have to kasher. I don't know anything about the plant. It's not because it's Pas Akum. There might be some other reason why you have to kasher. Now the second is like this. The second half of the answer is like this.
unknown case, we always pass.
The Ramah,
Anytime there's an unknown as a matter of policy.
I mean, it's
The Ra-
kosher all year round.
okay, the Ramah says, guys, okay, the Ramah says, in Kuf Yudal, in Kuf
I like that.
in Halacha Yudal, the Ramah says, the Ramah sticks in two words that are not in the document. Okay, when the Ramah says, you're not allowed to be mevatel Pas Akum,
Right.
you're not allowed to be mevatel Pas Akum, l'chatchila, right? That's what he said in the Dimmi, you're not allowed to be mevatel l'chatchila. The Ramah sticks in two words. He says it's, Aval Osel La'arvoi, okay, Aval Osel La'arvoi, you're not allowed to mix it in mean l'chatchila, and the Ramah sticks in the words, Kedei L'ochloi, in order to eat it. The way the Chacham Sodom says is that Kedei L'vatloi, okay, you're not allowed to do that. Okay? And what I think what the Ramah is trying to say is like this. In a normal case, like David said at the very beginning, he said, if I'm eating on, why am I not allowed to eat on a treif plate? If there's time that's in there that's going to be bottled into my food, why am I not allowed to do that? Because it's bittul l'chatchila. Because why are you eating on a treif plate? There are blias in there that are going to get into your food. Now the reason why that's bittul l'chatchila is, the truth is, I don't really...
It could be also mamash. It could be mamash.
I'm saying, even let's say it's bottle. So let's say the blias are bottle. Why is it usher to do that? Because why are you choosing to use the kli that has the blias? This is a task. Why do I choose to use the kli that has the blias instead of using the kli that doesn't have the blias? Okay? It gives an indication that I have some kind of interest in having those blias by me. Okay? What I'm saying is that this is not a simple case of bittul l'chatchila. This is not a simple case that I'm mamish pouring the stuff in because I want to have it in there. It's a very subtle bittul l'chatchila. There are blias in the plate, and we're saying you're like sort of showing that you want to have them in your food. You're not doing like a traditional bittul l'chatchila is to mamish pour the ester in. You want it in your food. Don't do it because you're being bittul l'chatchila.
And what happens if it's cold? Then you also, according to the Taz, you shouldn't do it. There's no bliss. It's cold.
If you're
no
eating
bittul,
cold?
no nothing. Eating cold. Am I allowed to take a tray plate and put a sandwich on it?
You are allowed to do that on a roy, like every so often. Right. Not make a permanent practice out of that thing. That's because we're afraid of a mistake.
You're right.
But on a temporary practice, you're allowed to do
But
it.
I'm saying, according to the logic of the Taz, you shouldn't do it. I have a
Why?
choice.
No, but no blias are going to come in. The task is if I'm doing it in a way that the blias are coming in and it's getting into my food, why am I doing that? Must be I want those blias. Even though I haven't made that point, but I'm just sort of showing something like that. So I think that the point, I think
We don't even do cold.
I think that the point here is, I think the Ramah saying is, when he says Kedei l'ochla, he needs to say it like this. Usually, we have rules that if you're eating on a treif plate that has blias coming into your food, that'll be bottled. You're not allowed to do it because that's bittul l'chatchila. But it's a very subtle bittul l'chatchila. So for Pas Akum, it's not exactly that we say don't be makbid on blias. We're not so coarse as to say that. We're saying is we are more open to viewing something as an ein kavanos levatel, that I have no interest in having that bli in. Meaning, it's harder to say that something is bittul l'chatchila. Whereas if I was eating on a treif plate, I would call this thing bittul l'chatchila. In this case, where the only answer is Pas Akum, and like Tyson said, it's really not answer in the first place. It's only a chumrah to hold it anyhow. Then we're more liberal in how we apply the rule of bittul l'chatchila. So it's not. I don't think the Rambam is saying that we don't hold the bittul l'chatchila or we don't hold the blias. It's that we're saying for this, blias by their nature tend to be in kavanas levatel. People are not trying to get those blias in. They're sort of happening in a way that they're stuck. The blias are getting in. But we look at it as bittul l'chatchila. But since Pas Akum is not usher, we're more liberal about viewing it as not kavanos levatel, as in kavanos levatel, and therefore we say it's only usher levatel, kadei l'ochloi, or kadei levatel, like the Chacham says. If I'm trying to get it in, so which is the case where you pour it in physically. I pour in some breadcrumbs onto my food, which are Pas Akum, then I'm trying to get it into my food. But where it's in a more subtle kind of bittul l'chatchila, that's I think the only case. That's what he's letting me, which is all cases of blias. All cases of blias are when you use a treif pot. You want the blias. it's like really like far-fetched to say you want that. We do. We say that. For the din of Pas Akum, excuse me, we're going to be more liberal in that sense, and view you as being ein kavanas lovatul, which is mutter, instead of being bittul.
Yes.